Okay, so before we start day 2 of 10.8, let's review day 1. We have to graph both of those inequalities and shade for both of them on the same grid or in the same coordinate plane down here. For our first line, y is less than 5. How do we usually graph those? Kian? We make a table. So we will make an XY table for that one before we talk about the M and the B. What should go in the Y column? Deshaun? 5. Y always has to be 5. What about the X column? Ryan?
1, 3, and 5.
Sure, we can use 1, 3, and 5. We need 3 numbers for X just so that we can make 3 different points. So it does not matter to me which numbers you use. We have to graph those points. So there's 1, 5, 3, 5, and 5, 5. After we graph those points, we should be able to see that we have a horizontal line. Should that line be solid or dashed? May? It should be dashed. There is not an equal to bar on the inequality sign for that line. So we have a dashed line. Before we talk about shading, let's go back and identify M and B real quick. What is the slope of a horizontal line? Kian? 0. It's always 0. And B is where that line crosses the y-axis. Where does that happen? Five. The line crosses the y-axis at 5. That's our B. All right, so let's decide if we're going to shade up or down. Who thinks they know where to shade? Shannon? Down. Very good. We've got a less than symbol, so we should shade down. Remember, when we shade, we do it a little lightly. Don't color it in super dark just yet. We still have to graph and shade for our second line. All right, for our second line, M and B, what are they? We need M and B. Tariana?
1/2 and -1.
Wonderful. 1/2 and -1. We start, I'll do a different color. We'll start our graph at -1 on the y-axis. 1/2 is our slope, so we are going to rise 1, run 2. So up 1, right 2, since they're both positive. Or as we've talked about before, instead of going up and right, where else could we go? Instead of up and right, we could go down and left. So we get several points on that graph. We have to decide if the line through those points is going to be solid or dashed. Who thinks they know? Natalie?
Solid.
It will be solid. We do have that equal to bar. So we will get a solid line through those points. All right, we have to decide if we are going to shade above or below, up or down. Lexi? We should shade up. It's a greater than symbol. So go to the line and then go straight up off of it. That is the up region. This one actually looks a little bit different from some of the ones we saw yesterday, I think. So up from that line is everywhere above it. So we kind of ignore that red dotted line that we'd put in for the first one when we're shading for that second line. But then we have to decide where our actual solution set is. That's where the regions overlap, or where we shaded both colors or both lines. Okay, where do they overlap? Keon? In the middle, right? So at the very top, the very, very top, we only have blue. This middle section here has both, and then at the bottom we've only got red. So they overlap in this middle chunk. So that's where we would shade it in darker to show that that's where they overlap. In order to graph a system of linear inequalities, remember, we're doing inequalities, not equations right now. The inequality must be solved for y. We need to get y by itself. This is not a new idea to us. All right, so this is not a new idea for us. We are familiar with getting y by itself. However, with inequalities, there's one special rule that we have to remember that's different from when we're just doing plain old equations. Okay, so let's take this first line and work on getting y by itself. What am I going to do to get y alone? This is a lot like what we did on Monday. Tariana? Very good. We subtract x from both sides. That leaves us with negative y is greater than. The x is negative. The 2 is positive. So we would write it as negative x plus 2. Okay, none of that's really new or different for us this week. We did that on Monday. But now, is the y all alone? No, we need to get rid of that negative sign. Okay, so if we're going to switch the sign on the y, what else has to change? All the signs have to change. So it's like dividing by a negative 1. Okay, that turns our y to be positive. That's going to turn our x to be positive. And it'll turn the 2 to be negative. All right. What else has to change, though? Okay? The greater than sign has to change. This is what's different about these. Okay? What's different about these is that those inequality signs flip if we multiply or divide by a negative. That's the only time they're going to flip. Multiply or divide by a negative. All right, now that we have y by itself, we can fill in that top line. Y is now less than x minus 2. We need to identify m and b. This goes back to what we were doing yesterday. I guess we're going to the sticks. Lexi, M and B for that line. Wonderful. We start at -2 on the y-axis. Our slope as a fraction would be 1 over 1, both of them positive. So we go up and right. Instead of going up and right, we could also go down and left. All right, we have to decide if that line is going to be solid or dashed. J. Riel, what do you think? Those are our options. So which one do you think it is? So we look at the inequality symbol. Does it have a bar underneath it? No. So what does that mean for our solid or dashed? There's no equal to bar. So we gotta pick one. What do you think? Dashed. I would agree with that. If there is no equal to bar, we have a dashed or dotted line. So we will fill that in. Next thing we have to decide is where to shade, up or down. Connie, what do you think? So if we look at the original problem, we would think up. But we need to look at when y is alone. So it would be down. So that gets a little tricky on these. Always make sure you're paying attention to what it is when y is alone. So when y is alone, it's a less than. That means we shade down. All right, let's move on to our second line. This one, x plus 2y is greater than or equal to 2. We need to get y alone. Tariana, what do you think we should do? Good. We are going to subtract the x again. So 2y is greater than or equal to -x plus 2. Y is not alone yet. Logan, what should we do next to get y alone? Divide everything by 2. Do I need to flip the inequality symbol? No, we divided by a positive. If we divide by a positive, that symbol does not change. Okay, remember that -x is like a -1x. So when we divide it by 2, it becomes -1/2 x. And 2 divided by 2 is 1. Okay, so we can fill that in. Y is greater than or equal to -1/2 x plus 1. Jamal Dixon, what are M and B? Very good. -1/2 and 1. We start our graph at +1 on the y-axis. -1/2 means we can go down 1, right 2. Instead of going down and right, we could go up and left. We have to decide if the line through those points will be solid or dashed. Ellie, what do you think? It will be a solid line because we have the equal to bar on our inequality symbol. We then have to decide if we are going to shade up or down. Danielle, what do you think? Up. We've got a greater than symbol, so we shade up from the red line, in my case. Finally, we have to decide where they overlap. Where does that happen? Kian? The top up here? I only see red up here. Where do I see both colors overlapping? On the side, that little triangle on the side. So we shade that in darker to show that that is where they are overlapping each other. All right, on example 2, once again, we need to get y alone on both of them before we are able to graph them. So for the first line, we've got x minus 2y is greater than or equal to 4. May, how would I get y by itself? Good. What would I do after that, May?
Divide -2 on each.
Beautiful. Okay, we've got to subtract off the x and then divide by the number on the y. These steps should be familiar to us. We've been doing them a lot lately. The y is now by itself. What special thing has to happen here? Ellie? The sign flips. We divided by a negative number. So the inequality symbol flips around. On the x term, we have a negative divided by a negative. So that will come out to be positive 1/2 x. 4 divided by -2 is -2. So we have -2. Y is less than or equal to 1/2 x minus 2. Jaquan, what are my m and b? 1/2 and -2, I would agree. So we're ready to start putting points on our graph. We start at -2 on the y-axis. We go up 1, right 2 for a slope of 1/2. Or we go Ryan?
Down 1, left 2.
Down 1, left 2. We have to decide if that line is going to be solid or dashed. Ryan, what do you think?
Solid.
It'll be a solid line through those points because we have an equal to bar. Solid line. Are we going to shade up or down, Kelby? Down, good. So that is where it can get confusing on these. Look at your symbol when y is by itself. When y is by itself, it's less than, so we are going to shade down. All right, next we move on to our other line. I'm going to erase solving for y here, so I've got a little bit more space. All right, for our other line, we've got x plus 3y is less than or equal to 6. We need to get y by itself there. Shannon, what would I do? Good, we subtract x from both sides. 3y is less than or equal to -x plus 6. What else do I have to do, Shannon? Very good, we divide by 3. That leaves us with y is less than or equal to -1/3 x plus 2. Okay, notice I did not flip the symbol this time because I divided by a positive, not by a negative. So -1/3 x plus 2. Keep going. Natalie, what are M and B here?
-1/3 for M and B is 2.
Wonderful. So we start our graph up at +2 on the y-axis. -1/3. So down 1, right 3. Down 1, right 3. Or I could go instead of down and right, I could go up and left. Up 1, left 3. Up 1, left 3. All right. We have to decide if we are going to put a solid or dashed line through those points. Deja, what do you think? A solid line, I would agree. We have the equal to bar on our symbol. So we put a solid line through those points. Finally, we have to shade for that line. Jamarl, do you think we should shade up or down? Down, I agree. We've got a less than symbol, so we shade down. So I have to decide now, where do those shaded regions overlap each other? Where do we think? Top, bottom, left, right? Towards the bottom. This big section towards the bottom. Notice that in this teeny tiny triangle off to the side, I just have red. So this blue line cuts it off over there. So I should not shade above it on that side. Ooh. So just this bottom section down here. That is where they overlap. All right, on number 3, starting our process over, we need to get y alone for both equations. This first equation, it's not too bad. Jakeem, what should I do? Subtract x. When I subtract x, I have y is greater than or equal to -x plus 5, and that's it. Y is alone. So I'm ready to identify M and B. Kion, what do you think for M and B? Very good. So we go up to 5 on our y-axis and put a point. That's for our B. Our slope is -1. If you want to think about it as a fraction, -1 over 1 means we should go down 1, right 1, or instead we could go up and left. Very good. We've got all those points for our line. We just have to decide solid or dashed. Keon, what do you think? I agree, it should be a solid line. We have an equal to bar underneath our symbol. And then we just have to decide where to shade. Nevaeh, do you think we should shade up or down? So we've got a greater than sign. Greater than means we should shade up, okay? Okay. Greater than, we should shade up, so go to the line and go straight up off of it. That region is considered up or above. So we shade that in. For our other line, x minus 2y is less than 8. We need to get y by itself. Deshaun, how should we do that? Good. We start off by subtracting the x. What should we do after that, Deshaun? Divide by a positive 2? By a negative 2. We divide everything by negative 2 to get that y all alone. What special thing happens here? The symbol, the sign here, flips around. We divided everything by a negative, so that symbol flips. A negative divided by a negative comes out to be a positive 1/2 x. Positive 8 divided by negative 2 is a negative 4. Okay, so we end up with y is greater than 1/2 x minus 4. We need our m and b. Houston, what are they? What is b? Negative 4, good. We start our graph at negative 4 on the y-axis for b. Our slope is positive 1/2, so we go up 1, right 2, or down 1, left 2. We have to decide if the line through those points should be solid or dashed. Franklin, what do you think? Dashed, I would agree. We need a dashed line because we do not have that equal to bar. And we have to decide if we are going to shade up or down. Jalen, what do you think? Up. Good. We look at the symbol when y is by itself. That's a greater than symbol. So we are shading up. And we have to decide where our shaded parts overlap each other. Where does that happen? Ryan?
Top right.
The top right corner up here. Okay, so we would shade that in a little bit darker to show that that is where those are overlapping each other. Number 4, we need to get y by itself in both of these equations. We'll start with 3x minus y is greater than negative 1. Jamal Dixon, how am I going to get y by itself? Very good. Subtract the 3x. That leaves me with a negative y is greater than negative 3x minus 1. Jamal, what else do I have to do? Very good. Divide everything by negative 1 so that our y comes out to be a positive y. But when I divide everything by a negative, what happens? The sign flips. So it is now a less than sign. All right. Negative divided by a negative is a positive 3x. Negative divided by a negative is a positive 1. So we end up with y is less than 3x plus 1. I need to know my m and b. Tariana? Very good. 3/1 is my slope. Positive 1 is my y-intercept. So I start my graph at positive 1 on the y-axis. A slope of 3/1 means that I am going to go up 3, right 1. Up 3, right 1. Instead of going up and right, I could go down and left. Okay, not quite as many points this time because our slope is bigger. We need to decide if the line through those points is solid or dashed. Natalie, what do you think?
Dash.
A dashed line should go through those points. We do not have the equal to bar on our inequality symbol, so it's dashed. Deja, should we shade up or down? We should shade down. The inequality symbol when y is alone is a less than sign. Down on this one can be a little weird to figure out, so go somewhere on your line and then go straight down from your line. That whole area where you landed is considered down. For our second line, we've got x minus y is greater than -4. Logan, what should I do to get y alone? Good, we subtract the x on both sides. -y is greater than -x minus 4. What else do I need to do, Logan? Good, we need to switch the sign on the y, so we divide by a -1. That leaves me with everything being positive now. It was all negative, so all the signs flip to be positive. What else has to flip? The inequality symbol or sign here in the middle, that has to flip around also when we divide by a negative. So we end up with y is less than x plus 4. Jamaro, what are my m and b? Yep. Good, 1 and 4. When you write your m, don't put the x with it. It's just a number. So just 1 over 1 or 1. We start our graph up at +4 on the y-axis. We have to then use our slope to get more points. Our slope is a +1, so we go up 1, right 1, up 1, right 1, up 1, right 1, or down and to the left. Lots of points for that line. We have to decide if that line is solid or dashed. Kelby, what do you think? Dashed, I agree. We do not have an equal to bar, so we've got a dashed line going through those points. And then Shannon, should we shade up or down? Down, I agree. When y is alone, it's a less than symbol. So we shade down. We are looking for where our shaded regions overlap each other. Where does that happen? Keon? On the right. This big chunk on the right side of our graph is where we see them overlapping each other. So we shade that in darker to show that that is our solution or our answer set. Any point in that area will work for both of our inequalities. All right, for our last couple problems, let's work on just solving for y together. Okay, I think that we've got the graphing part down, so let's just make sure that we can get y by itself on these. So for our first one on number 5, 3x minus 4y is less than -12. We are trying to get y by itself. Ryan, what should we do? Good. We subtract 3x on both sides. That leaves me negative 4y is less than negative 3x minus 12. Danielle, what should we do next?
Divide both sides by.
Good. Divide by a negative 4. That's going to leave me with a positive 1y. What special thing happens here? Sign flips. We divided by a negative, so our symbol flips. And then for both of these terms, a negative divided by a negative leaves us with a positive. So positive 3/4 x plus 12 divided by 4 is 3. Okay, so y is greater than 3/4 x plus 3. All right, let's go ahead and get y by itself on the other one as well. 3x plus 4y is greater than 0. Jariel, how am I going to get y by itself? Wonderful. Subtract 3x on both sides. Leaves me with 4y is greater than negative 3x. If you would like to put the plus 0, you can, but you do not have to. Lexi, what else do I need to do? Divide by 4. Does our sign need to flip? No. So we just have y is greater than negative 3/4 x. All right, we're going to stop there for today's notes. If you got more of the examples done, that's wonderful. If we have questions about them, we can go over them tomorrow. We are going to review and take a quiz. Well, we review tomorrow and take a quiz on Friday.